Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today. Happy International Volunteer Day. I'm Angela Canterbury. I'm VEGA's Managing Director of Communications and Advocacy. VEGA, as you likely know, is a consortium of volunteer-sending nonprofit organizations that generate prosperity worldwide by creating partnerships with volunteers and people who are seeking more skills for self-reliance. Since 2004, VEGA has impacted livelihoods and futures of more than 5 million individuals in 50 countries through 65 programs, including 47,000 volunteer days and saving more than 34 million taxpayer dollars. Our members, who they represent millions of Americans, and most of our members are represented here today. We are here today to celebrate the extraordinary contributions of members of Congress and volunteers to promote prosperity and reduce poverty. Today we're going to hear stories of impact that USAID is having with skilled volunteers in partnership with VEGA's members and the farmer-to-farmer community. We will also hear about an exciting new USAID initiative to leverage the skills of volunteers. And then we're going to have a lively discussion about it. It is a very packed schedule today, so I'm going to we're going to get started right away, and we are very honored to have Senator Johnny Isakson here with us today. I'd like to introduce my boss, Michael Deal, CEO and President of VEGA, who will introduce the senator. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Angela, and thank you for joining us today. It's great to see you all. It's my privilege to introduce Senator Johnny Isakson from the great state of Georgia. He is a true leader in Congress for effective foreign assistance. Senator Isakson agrees with the new USAID Administrator, Mark Green, and with us here at VEGA about the importance of economic growth as truly the best way to end global poverty. Senator Isakson is in his role as chairman of the committee that oversees the State Department and USAID, is truly helping to preserve resources, find resources and tools that those agencies need. The senator is also the co-chair of the Senate caucus for effective foreign assistance, along with Senator Coons. Last year, the last Congress, Senator Isakson was really instrumental in passing some landmark legislation. He was the author of the Electrify Africa Act. He was a co-sponsor of the Global Food Security Act, and he also was a co-sponsor of the Senate version of the Foreign Aid Transparency Act. In this Congress, the senator has reintroduced the Economic Growth and Development Act, which is designed to help private sector firms and help them access the various agencies of the foreign assistance programs, and also helping to leverage their expertise and their resources for furthering U.S. foreign assistance objectives. Senator Isakson is also a champion for international service. He has been an advocate for the Peace Corps and for reforms of the Peace Corps for a long time, and certainly we consider him a champion for VEGA. Earlier this year, when our 13-year partnership with USAID was about to expire, the senator joined with Senators Bozeman and Leahy to write to the acting administrator to seek an extension of the program, and the result was an extension that allowed time for the new administrator, Mark Green, to get confirmed and to be able to come in and review options for incorporating volunteers in a more innovative way. Also, when Mark Green was up for his hearing before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Senator Isakson introduced some questions for the record, asking Mark Green about his interest in collaborating with Congress in discussing ways to incorporate skilled volunteers into our program in more innovative ways. So we thank you, Senator we are very grateful for your support, and we feel that certainly contributed to the fact that the new administrator, once he was approved, one of his initial acts was to approve the Volunteer for International Security and Prosperity initiative, which we're going to hear more about later today. Thank you, Senator. We're very grateful. VEGA and our 28 member organizations really appreciate your leadership in helping to make foreign aid more effective and recognizing the valuable role of skilled volunteers, not only in terms of the results that they accomplish, but in the taxpayer savings, and also demonstrating the value, demonstrating American values around the globe. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. With your permission, can y'all hear me fine? Y'all, I've got a big mouth anyway, so. Big mouth but weak legs from my operation I had earlier this year, so I'm recovering. That's why I'm a little wobbly. But I appreciate the nice introduction. I appreciate the opportunity I've had to work with so many of you over the 14 years that I've been in the United States Senate and the 20 years I've been in Congress. Building a sustainable future for people in need, broadening the access to health care, sustainable agriculture, electrifying Africa, whatever it might be. Y'all have been at the forefront of the efforts that we've tried to be a part of to make life better for people around the world. If America is anything, it's a catalyst for the improvement of all human beings. And the work that y'all do in volunteering your efforts on agriculture, on health care, and so many things that you do and that USAID does, it makes all the difference in the world. Mark Green is the perfect person at the perfect time to be running USAID. I loved Raj Shah. He did a great job. I've worked with USAID in a lot of different ways, but we got the perfect guy there. I talk to Mark all the time. His heart's in the right place, but his head's also in the right place. He knows how to do it, not just what he wants to do. And I've just been honored and privileged to be a part of efforts that y'all have undertaken to improve life for those in less fortunate situations around the world. And I'll continue to do so. So any recognition you give to me is really a testimony to you and the work that you do on behalf of the impoverished people around the world. So God bless all of you at this special time of the year, Thanksgiving and Christmas. Blessings to your family for a happy holiday season. And if our office could ever be of help to you at all, please don't hesitate to call us. Thank you very much. Oh, thank you.
Appreciation for your support.
I like the color, too. Most of them are plain. This has got blue. Thank you very much. Oh, okay. Thanks, man. Thank you again very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Senator Isaacson, for all that you do and for gracing us with your presence today. We really appreciate it. And thank you for those remarks. You take care. Happy holidays. I see Congressman Donovan is here. Is Congressman Donovan here? No? Okay, well then, Mike, I'll ask you to come back up, please, and introduce our next speaker, Jim Peters.
Angela's got me doing double duty here. It's my privilege also to introduce James Peters, who's going to speak to us today about this new mechanism that USAID has put into place, the Volunteers for International Security and Prosperity mechanism. Jim is the Deputy Assistant Administrator in the Bureau that has responsibility for this volunteer mechanism that cuts across all sectors and across to the entire agency. Jim has a 20-year career with AID. In addition to being the Deputy Assistant Administrator for the Bureau for Economic Growth, Education, and Environment, he is also the Acting Global Water Coordinator. And in previous jobs that he has had in the agency, it includes the Deputy Mission Director in Pakistan, Acting Mission Director in Albania, and he has been, so we're being very careful here today, he has also been the General Counsel for Ethics and Administration. So I know that Angela's taken great care that we're following all the rules very carefully. And before AID, Jim was in the military with the Air Force as a major, 10 years with the military. So we're really fortunate to have Jim join us here today, and we look forward to your comments on USAID and how it values skilled volunteers. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mike, and also thanks to the Senator for those very kind comments. And I bring best wishes from our Administrator, Mark Green, as well. I'm really happy to participate in this event today to celebrate International Volunteers Day and to recognize the outstanding volunteers for their important contributions to global development. I don't want to take away from that celebration of the people that we're honoring today. I was asked to talk a little bit about USAID programs, and I want to focus on those for just a bit before we turn the program over to really honoring the people that we're here for today. USAID has a long history of working with volunteers and volunteer-sending organizations. For more than 50 years, that's about as long as we've been in existence, we've supported volunteer-based partnerships to increase the impact of our programs and maximize their value to the U.S. taxpayer. Leveraging the experience and skills of these volunteers is at the core of several USAID programs. Among those examples, the Farmer to Farmer program, which in FY17 provided 873 volunteers in 41 countries to help build local capacity to increase food production and rural incomes and address environmental and natural resource challenges. The total value of these services in FY17 alone is estimated at over $7 million. Another example, the Energy Utility Partnership Program, USAID's partnership with the U.S. Energy Association, which over the past 25 years has supported exchanges between U.S. and developing country power company officials and technicians to improve the operational efficiency and financial viability of electric utilities. USCA members have donated more than 90,000 hours of service since 2007. And I would particularly like to recognize USAID's work with the Volunteers for Economic Growth Alliance, VEGA, the organizers of this event. Mike Deal and the folks at VEGA have been the face of many of USAID's volunteerism efforts over the past 13 years. We owe them much gratitude for their role in what we have accomplished together in over 50 countries. Ongoing efforts by VEGA members include cultivating new frontiers in Africa's work in partnership with the U.S. government's Feed the Future program and Nestle to improve maize quality in Nigeria. The International Executive Service Corps' work under USAID Sri Lanka's U-Lead program to increase youth employment and secure financing for youth startups. The World Council on Credit Unions work with credit unions in Ukraine to expand agricultural lending. By addressing some of the most important challenges in the developing world, these programs are showing us the vital role that volunteers play in promoting global prosperity and self-reliance and advancing American values. Volunteers help build the global community by creating people-to-people connections that often outlive the programs and generating understanding and long-lasting relationships between U.S. and international organizations that have the potential to transcend any individual activity. In recognition of this, under Administrator Green's leadership, as Mike mentioned earlier, USAID recently solidified its commitment to engaging volunteer-sending organizations even further with the launch of the Volunteers for International Security and Prosperity Annual Program Statement. We call it VISP for short because we're the government and we have to have an acronym. But the VISP APS, Annual Program Statement. This is modeled after our Global Development Alliance And this global mechanism is designed to streamline the process for engaging volunteers in our development efforts across all sectors. The new process involves, from the very start, close collaboration between volunteer organizations and USAID missions or offices to co-create activities that meet mutual objectives. It's also open to partnerships with local volunteer organizations who, as part of the indigenous culture, possess a natural facility for appreciating and working with existing customs and beliefs as they carry out programs, increasing the sustainability of results. Moving forward with the implementation, USAID is now developing addenda to the APS to solicit new ideas and volunteer-based solutions to development challenges. One of the things I've heard this morning is questions about how well this is known in the field, and I've got some insights now, and we need to market this, and I invite you all to help me with that. I invite you all to learn more about the program and how to get involved. We need your fresh ideas and new solutions to challenges. This invitation to collaborate is actually the very core of the mechanism. It's a two-way street. And I was assured before I came on that there would be no questions asked of me, which is terrific this morning. However, I'm looking forward to having a dialogue and having a discussion on this and looking towards some of you to help guide me through that. And as you consider your engagement with USAID's development efforts under VISP and our other volunteer programs, consider the benefits that a partnership with USAID can bring in the form of new business opportunities, valuable market research, and the experience and perspective that comes from working within the global community. Now turning to the honorees, as I reviewed the stories of today's honorees, the first thing that struck me was their strong commitment to their work and the satisfaction they gained from trying to make the world a better place. But what really stands out when you read those bios is the actual tangible impact that they've had. On behalf of Administrator Green and USAID, I commend the volunteers honored here today and their colleagues for their efforts to build a more prosperous and peaceful world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jim. We appreciate you being here. And next I'm going to introduce Ryan Donovan, who is the Chief Advocacy Officer for CUNA, the Credit Union Association. Thank you.
Thanks, Angela, and good afternoon, everyone. It's my honor to recognize and introduce a member of Congress who, in my humble opinion, has the best surname in Congress, Representative Dan Donovan from New York. He's a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, and in the last Congress, he co-sponsored the Foreign Aid Transparency Act, and this year he's a co-sponsor of the Economic Growth and Development Act, another important bill to modernizing foreign assistance. Representative Donovan has been a champion for VEGA. Earlier this year, he joined Representative Hill in a letter of support for VEGA that recognized VEGA's value to U.S. taxpayers, to the USAID field missions, and to meeting U.S. foreign assistance objectives. The letter also noted that funding for VEGA isn't an additional appropriation, and during a time of uncertain budget conditions, continuing successful foreign assistance programs that deliver real savings to the U.S. taxpayer, programs like VEGA, should be a priority. For credit unions, he's been an important partner in Congress as well, supporting the Financial Choice Act and more recently our resolution of disapproval of an arbitration rule. We're grateful for Representative Donovan's support of VEGA and the World Council of Credit Unions, and on behalf of the Credit Union National Association, the World Council of Credit Unions, and the Volunteers for Economic Growth Alliance, and all of the 27 other volunteer sending member organizations and the millions of Americans that they represent, we commend and thank Representative Donovan for his leadership on USAID programs and policies that leverage American generosity and private sector expertise for a more effective global development. Thank you, Representative Donovan, and please deliver some remarks.
Thank you, buddy.
Absolutely. Good to see you.
Thank you so much.
There you go.
It's very
I think
kind.
they want to take our picture here, too. Great. Thank you,
buddy.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you, Ryan. I'm so glad to see that VEGA doesn't believe in nepotism. But please tell my Aunt Mary I love to stuffing at Thanksgiving. Thank you very much. You know, you guys have been doing tremendous work, and those members like myself in Congress who just, our role is to support you, can't do enough for you. I want to thank you for allowing me to join you. The humanitarian work on behalf of our nation that you make such a difference in people's lives. In particular, I applaud you on the strides you've made in maternal health and infant and even prenatal health. I was elected to Congress in a special election May 5th of 2015. On May 12th, Speaker Boehner swore me in because there was a vacancy. I didn't have to wait. I wasn't a member of a class. I just came down by myself. They swore me in. They told me to vote. It was really cool. I put a card in the thing. I voted, and then I started talking to everybody, and they started yelling. The second vote had already happened, and I almost missed it. So that was my introduction to Congress. But the following Tuesday, May 19th, I get a call from Serena. I'm at an event for myself, and she said, you know, you got to come home. I'm going to the hospital. I said, what for? She said, we're having a baby, you moron. I said, no, the baby's coming on Saturday. It's on the schedule. She said, well, I guess the baby didn't see your damn schedule. Now get home. So in 3 weeks, my life changed. I got elected to Congress. I got sworn in, and I had, at 58 years old, my very first baby, although her mother introduces her as my very last baby. And I guess that's where my interest in maternal health, infant health, prenatal care really solidified. I always believed in it, but now it was personal to me. I tell people that on Yellow Rose, Catherine hit the birth lottery. On May 19th of 2015, she was born on the same day tens of thousands of other children were born. Except she was born to Dan and Serena on Staten Island and was seen by a pediatrician in the hospital, has had all of her well visits, has had all of her vaccinations, and many of those tens of thousands of children who were born on the same day she was didn't hit the lottery and don't have those same advantages. And when I was introduced to a group that was dealing in Africa with prenatal care and infant care, and heard about children and mothers dying from diseases that are preventable, things that we have vaccines for, things that we don't even think about anymore. I don't think I suspect there are some, but very few children in our great nation die from diarrhea. But there were children throughout the world that were dehydrating and dying, and that there were Americans who put their resources, gave their energy, and gave their time to help these young people from a strange land. And when people say, you know, we have to take care of our own, yeah, we do. But we were blessed, this nation, with enough resources, enough talent to take care of other people who are less fortunate than us. And I'm also on Homeland Security, besides being on Foreign Affairs and my subcommittee being Global Health. In Homeland Security, I think people who aren't in the field don't realize how the stability in other nations are good for our security of our nation. And when people are healthy in other nations and have food and medicine, that's good for our nation as well. So I thank you for this. But you guys give out awards to people who are just supporters. I'm here to thank those of you who do this as a volunteer basis. At some point, I hope to retire one day and volunteer as well. My retirement got pushed back a couple of years because in 17 years I still have to pay college tuition now. But I came to honor you and thank you for what you do for the people of this earth and how you represent our great nation so well in other parts of the globe. And to remind you that advocacy works. So for some of my colleagues who might not be as supportive as I am, or not as understanding of all the great things that you do, advocate. It does work. I got involved in this because of someone from back home came to advocate and instruct me and inform me about the great work that volunteers are doing throughout the globe. So continue to, it actually does work. So thank you for this recognition, but thank you for all the hard work that you do every day. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Congressman. We really appreciate you being here and all that you do. Thank you. So now I'd like to invite my panelists up to join me here. And I am going to very quickly introduce everyone. I will refer you to the program to read more about their very impressive careers. We have a very tight schedule. It's my job to keep us on time, so this is literally going to be a lightning round. We also want to invite all of you to be a part of this conversation, so we're going to kick things off pretty quickly and then open things up for questions, open the mic up for questions. So let me have a seat. When you want to speak, it is sort of like giving testimony. So thanks for being here. Can you hear me back there? Let me move this a little closer. So to my right, I have John Douglas, who is a partner at Davis Polk's Financial Institutions Group and also a volunteer and chairman of the board for the Financial Services Volunteer Corps, which is a founding member of VEGA. Oh, wait. I'm out of order. Sorry, guys. John Ellenberger, to my right.
We're all to your right.
Thank you. John Ellenberger, Land O'Lakes International Development CEO and president. And we've got Ed Keterakis, who is with CNFA, also a founding member of VEGA, Culting New Frontiers in Agriculture, and Ryan Donovan, again, who introduced the congressman. So I'm going to kick things off pretty quickly here and first ask each of you to just say a few words about why you're here and how you and your organization are connected with VEGA.
Do you have an order in mind, or do we just go? Sure. FSVC was a founder of VEGA, or one of the founding members of VEGA, and we're delighted to participate. FSVC was formed in 1990 at the behest of President Bush to help the Eastern European countries that had just left the orbit of Russia to develop sound capital markets and banking systems. And since 1990, FSVC has sent thousands of volunteers, primarily lawyers, bankers, accountants, investment bankers, regulators, into Eastern Europe, Russia, Southeast Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa, Middle East, North Africa, to help them really develop economies, inclusive economies. And I think our relationship with VEGA and our work and support that we've received from the U.S. government is really critical to our being able to do what I view as some of the most important work in the world. So that's why I'm here, other than being asked, which was nice.
Thanks, John. Ed?
Sure, thank you. Red is on, yes?
Yes.
Okay. So CNFA used to be called Citizens Network for Foreign Affairs, and now we're cultivating new frontiers in agriculture. Since our start in 1985, really working with the private sector has been a part of our DNA. We began our work in helping large multinational corporations like John Deere, ADM, and Cargill enter the Soviet markets after the fall of the Soviet Union. And we helped them to establish joint partnerships with entrepreneurs on the ground. We've been with VEGA since its inception, and we've worked since the early 90s with the Farmer to Farmer program, where we've sent over 3,000 volunteers, volunteer assignments overseas during that period up till now. We've also held a few contracts under VEGA and a few cooperative agreements. We started in Iraq and Afghanistan with programs to develop value chains there, working in partnership with IESC and ACD-IVOCA on those programs. And currently, we're implementing a large horticulture development program in Egypt, and it's focused on export markets and introducing standards into the horticultural value chain to help farmers get access to European markets most typically. And it was mentioned earlier, we are implementing this partnership that between USAID and Nestle in northern Nigeria, which seeks to reduce the levels of aflatoxin and mycotoxins and other contaminants like aluminum in the maize and soy value chains. And through this work, we've really worked broadly with the private sector. Since we've started, we've brought other private sector on board with us, such as Olem, Syngenta. They're very interested in our work and want to partner with us. So again, working with VEGA, working with volunteers, but also working with the private sector is a part of the reason that we're in the mix with the VEGA executing members.
Thanks so much, Ed. And John, let me see if I can correct the record. I think I gave you a promotion. John Ellenberger
don't back it away.
is the Senior Vice President for Land O'Lakes International Development.
Now I can go home. That's
right.
Good. I won't be thrown out. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is John Ellenberger. I represent Land O'Lakes International Development. I'm guessing in this crowd, I don't really have to explain, perhaps, some of the development aspects that have been a part of our organization for a long time. But just to refresh the memories for those that might not know, Land O'Lakes is a farmer-owned cooperative founded nearly 100 years ago. It's quite an organization that's been growing tremendously and reaches about a quarter of all corn and soybean farmers and about 50% of all the acres in the United States, along with a business that is primary in the area of animal nutrition under the Purina brand, and then the dairy foods business that I'm sure all of you are well aware of as U.S. citizens. What you may not be as aware of is that we've had 40 years of doing international development work. We've been in 80 different countries around the world. Like the other folks at the table, we are founding partners and members of VEGA, proud to be so. We're a group that has done a number of different pieces of work for VEGA over the years through VEGA in countries like Afghanistan and Yemen and currently in Sri Lanka, and more to come on that. What's unique about Land O'Lakes, I think, as it relates to why we're here, is that we're a company of about 10,000 employees. So we have a terrific resource of people that we can and do draw from for volunteer opportunities. We got into this business of being in the development business because farmers are many things, and have many things, but one of the things they have are big hearts. They define the neighborhood largely, and increasingly globally, and that is why they steered their resources in part to go to international development work. And we're proud to say that through VEGA and through with Farmer to Farmer throughout, we've had a long history of doing some great work sponsored by USAID and others. Thank you.
Well, as I was introduced earlier, I'm Ryan Donovan with the Credit Union National Association, and I think I'm here because I was a volunteer on a VEGA project earlier this year that World Council of Credit Unions is working to implement in Ukraine. It's the Credit for Agriculture Producer program, and it's a 4-year program that's funded by USAID and implemented by World Council with the assistance of VEGA. And the idea here is that we want to strengthen the credit union sector in Ukraine so that the quality of financial services products that are offered to farmers and to agribusiness in rural areas of Ukraine is improved. My role and my mission there was essentially threefold. One, I wanted to get a better understanding of the challenges that were facing Ukrainian credit unions as they work to serve their members. I had the opportunity to meet with Ukrainian government officials to talk to them a little bit about the U.S. credit union system, our governance structure, our tax structure, and our regulatory structure. And I also worked to train Ukrainian credit union leaders in essential tools of advocacy. As I said, I spent about a week there, and my takeaways were essentially that the credit unions in Ukraine have many of the same challenges that credit unions in the United States face, particularly in terms of the restrictions on who they can serve and also their perceived relevancy to borrowers. The government in Ukraine seems to have a similar struggle with understanding credit unions and the role that they might play in helping Ukraine and its economy grow. But credit union leaders there are just as eager as credit union leaders in the United States to see their system grow and advocate on behalf of their members. And my overall impression was that Ukraine is looking westward, not eastward. They're looking forward, not backwards. There's a lot of opportunity there, and this program is going to be successful as much a result of our efforts there as it is the efforts of the Ukrainians on the ground that want to embrace the credit union model and work to further develop it. So I was real pleased to have the opportunity to volunteer in Ukraine and wish the best for the program.
Terrific. Thanks, Ryan, and thanks for volunteering. I would like to learn a little bit more about the Biz Plus program from you, John Ellenberger. I think that this is one example of how the partnership with USAID can truly generate jobs and raise incomes. The statistics are pretty impressive over the years, the number of jobs from the program in Sri Lanka. Direct jobs, more than 6,000. Indirect jobs, more than 4,000. Incomes, gross household incomes have risen more than $9 million. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure, I can. I have had the good fortune of going out and having a chance to see this particular project in action. Spent about a week and a half in Sri Lanka, and can speak firsthand to the impact that is being achieved through this program. It's a unique program. It's unique for us. It's unique, I think, in the area. It started back in 2011. Land O'Lakes had done a couple of dairy-focused development projects in Sri Lanka, so we had a history in the country. But the scope and scale and intent of this program were quite different. It recognized the fact that after a 30-year civil war, you might remember the Tamil Tigers and all of the challenges that occurred within that country for years and years. Peace was achieved, and the U.S. government interest was in driving the kind of stability that was mentioned earlier, to try to drive economies and jobs and opportunity, and they need people to figure out ways to help accomplish that. So USAID, through the VEGA mechanism, started the Biz Plus program. It's a program that focuses on investing, making capital investments to local operations, businesses that are matched, and then some. So the program overall has invested something around $10 million in capital grants, but that's been nearly doubled with nearly $18 million of partner investment that have in part driven the outcome of new jobs that Angela mentioned a minute ago. What's also unique about this program is even though we are an agricultural-oriented development group, only probably a little less than half of the approximate 50 organizations that have benefited or been invested in by this program are ag-related. In fact, with the intent of growing jobs and a more vibrant economy, the project has invested in about 50 different companies and organizations in 10 different industries. So it's a very broad-based effort to try to drive economic improvement. It's not just money, though. It's money, but it is also importantly managerial and technical advice and counseling. Many of these organizations that we're partnering with are at that stage where the entrepreneur who started the organization is choosing to move on, or they're family organizations that have reached a certain scale. But the challenge is very fundamental to both of those. How do you pivot to more professional management and growth that will ensure longer-term vitality of those businesses, those jobs, and essentially the investment that we're making? So really, it's all of those things that have made this a very successful program. On the volunteering front, Biz Plus, through Land O'Lakes implementation, has had about 35 different volunteers contributing about 1,400 volunteer days. Some of the value that was mentioned earlier, a little over $600,000 of value that the U.S. government realizes through the volunteer commitments to the Biz Plus program. So by all accounts, a very successful program. I had a chance to meet with the mission director when I was in Colombo, and as was mentioned in a conversation earlier today, they really appreciate the great work that's been done in Sri Lanka through this program.
Thanks so much. Ed, you mentioned one of our newer programs that just launched in Nigeria, a Feed the Future program to deal with the threat of aflatoxin there, which, of course, endangers lives and also stunts growth in children. It's a huge problem, not just in Nigeria, across Africa and in other parts of the developing world. Our partner there is Nestle, and hoping to have additional partners, as you mentioned. Although USAID and our organizations have for years been doing public-private partnerships, I think we're all still struggling to do them well. We are hoping that this new program will be a model. There is this idea that's out there. It's been coined by certainly the Shared Value Initiative called Shared Value, and it is this idea that companies will seek to solve social problems if they also find business opportunities in doing so. So I was wondering if you, Ed, and maybe some of you others have some ideas about that as an opportunity for us, and your thoughts in general about public-private partnerships.
Sure. Thank you, Angela. Beyond shared value, it's almost a shared necessity. The FAO has estimated that over $80 billion a year in investment in agriculture and agribusiness are necessary to continue to meet the world's food needs. And if you take USAID's and World Bank's combined investment in 2016, you get about $4 billion, which is about 5% of that figure. And so you can understand that the rest has to come from the private sector. So our partnership with Nestle is just a piece of the larger puzzle of public-private partnerships that will allow us to achieve food security. This partnership is, as you say, there's a challenge to get the public side and the private side together at the same table at the right time with the right program. And my hat's off to VEGA for having established that. You guys did a really good job. We are working on a very serious issue that is sort of a hidden health concern because aflatoxins are not visible, and they are very deleterious to maternal and child health and human health in general. And Nestle is particularly interested in mitigating the levels of aflatoxins and aluminum in their supply chain because they are producing, among other things, baby food in this factory in northern Nigeria. So they want their supply to be to meet the highest of standards, highest of global standards for aflatoxin and aluminum. And we're working through the Nigerian Volunteer Corps, a national volunteer corps that Nigeria has set up to cultivate volunteers and get them into the field to work with all members along the supply chain, farmers, working with aggregators, working with storage and transport providers to help them understand what they can do, their part in reducing aflatoxins in the supply chain. It takes the effort of the entire supply chain, not just one actor, to make sure that the maize and the soy, when it reaches the factory gates, are free or at least have minimal aflatoxin in them. So essentially, it's not only a partnership with the private sector such as Nestle or Olam, but all the smaller actors along the value chain. So we really appreciate the partnership, and thank you, Angela.
Thanks. Other thoughts? Land O'Lakes has been doing public-private partnerships in its own way for, as you said, many, many years, decades. So, John, as other companies are coming into the space and learning how to do what you've done for years, what advice might you have for them?
Well, I guess the advice we would share is that they're vital, and that probably goes without saying. You mentioned earlier they can be quite difficult to execute, but I do think we're kind of grounded in the belief that if we're going to achieve what Administrator Green has called for in terms of working ourselves collectively out of jobs as a wonderful intent, that is only going to happen if there's private sector take-up and engagement so that the investments that are made through development are picked up and carried forward by the local private sector. It doesn't have to be global, it doesn't have to be global multinational types of partners. Often some of the best partners are those that are closer to the ground. We've experienced that in work that we've done in a number of countries, most recently some work in Bangladesh, where we're working with 3 of the primary local dairy companies to help ensure a successful outcome of a significant multi-year investment made in that sector in that country. And that's not a unique situation. That's the example, the typical example of the type of work that we and a lot of other implementers seek to do.
Great, thanks. I would like to open things up to the audience so that you can join in and ask some questions or make some comments. Thanks, Katie's coming to get the microphone to share with you. While you're thinking about those questions and raising your hands, I'll ask our panelists to talk a little bit about VISP, so the new initiative at USAID, which we have welcomed. What is your advice about how USAID and we all can help to make that a success? How can we achieve the very ambitious goals that were set forth in that APS? And what advice do you have for all of us in the room?
I'll jump in and say I first of all want to thank USAID for continuing to support and provide for a volunteer-focused program. As an organization, as I mentioned, that has a long history of leveraging volunteers outside our organization, but also within, where we use, for example, some of the highest potential members of our organization in what's called a talent acquisition program and put them out into these opportunities to learn about how to add value in these foreign markets and countries. To have walked away from volunteerism as a key component of our diplomatic portfolio, I think would have been a big mistake. So I think, first of all, it's thanks for doing that. I think the other thing that comes to mind immediately for me is you mentioned marketing, which is one of the ones that I was thinking, how do we ensure that the missions are well aware enough to make sure that they can match that tool to the need that they've got? We can be a voice, all of us implementers can be a voice in helping that happen, but we also need the weight of the organization to help push that forward. And then lastly, I would say speed. The need is there. The faster that we can move to these opportunities and finding ways to align resources to need, the better off we'll be.
If I might add one thought or two, I think volunteerism is almost unique to the United States. We've worked all over the world at FSVC and find that American citizens have this incredible desire to do good in the world and to really make a difference. And programs like VISP and other programs can harness the expertise and talents and energy and desire of U.S. citizens and really make a tremendous change in the world. I only have the viewpoint from FSVC, but as we've moved from crisis to crisis, financial crisis all around the world, for us to be able to draw on people like Paul Volcker, the former head of the RTC, Wall Street lawyers, accountants, investment bankers, the head of the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City, as we've worked in Afghanistan and Iraq and Middle East and now Somalia and Sub-Saharan Africa, to be able to bring talent and expertise like that to these critical situations is just incredibly important. And programs like VISP really have, I think, the ability to harness one of the unique assets of the United States and really do good in the world.
Angela, I just can't help but notice the number of cooperative organizations that are a part of VEGA and you know, listed on the slide there. You know, for credit unions, every member of a credit union board is a volunteer. Volunteerism runs very deep through the veins of the credit union system, and we've been able to leverage that for the program that I talked about, but I think there's an opportunity to leverage that volunteer spirit that exists in credit unions and in other cooperatives to the success of the program. And I just encourage continuing to draw on the expertise and volunteerism that the cooperative sector has.
Thanks so much. And you thought this was going to be a non-controversial panel, right? But I'm going to have to disagree with you, John, on one point. And I think that is that Americans are very generous, and we do volunteer at very high rates. I think we are second in the world, and I'm remembering it's Malaysia that I think beat us out. Someone will fact check that for me, I'm sure. Also, I would be remiss if I didn't mention our Canadian award winner this year. We do have partnerships with the Canadian Volunteer Corps as well as the Australian volunteers who are members of VEGA. So it is true that Americans are very generous of spirit, and we have a huge untapped resource. We have really only begun to scratch the surface of what the U.S. government can do to partner with American citizens. Are there any questions from the audience? Comments? Raise a hand. No? Okay, well then, oh, yes, up here. Wait for the microphone if you wouldn't mind. Thanks.
Thank you. Andrea Patrick from IESC. I actually have a question for Mr. Douglas. As you are the representative of sort of the day-to-day private sector engagement on the panel, how do you think, Mr. Douglas, that the private sector itself benefits from this engagement with this kind of international volunteerism, as well as this sort of tripartite relationship with the government vis-a-vis USAID?
I can speak, I think, both from the point of view of FSVC as an organization and someone who has volunteered. I often tell people that I work for money because I need money. But I volunteer for FSVC out of love. These are extraordinarily interesting and fulfilling assignments that we get involved in, and I think have a remarkably big impact. And I don't know of a single volunteer, and we talk to them after their visits, but I don't know of a single one who has come back and expressed disappointment of having given and received more than he or she gave in that effort. And it's really true almost regardless of where they go, and in some senses regardless of what they do. We helped the government of Afghanistan establish a framework for their banks, such as they were, and introduce a currency after things more or less stabilized. The people that were involved were people from the accounting firms, from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, from the Federal Reserve in Washington, lawyers from some of the big Wall Street firms, and others who had expertise and experience in these sort of matters, to the extent you can have experience in replacing creating a currency in a war-torn country. But they all came back with just these remarkable stories, remarkable experience that they could use in their own lives and in their own practices and their own business, but really having felt that they'd done something meaningful and worthwhile, more so really than what they do during their day jobs. So I just, this volunteer stuff that comes without an agenda and really only a desire to do good is remarkably fulfilling.
Can I piggyback on that answer? I would say we have seen a similar kind of response from the people that have gone out into the field. And to your question about how does it turn around and benefit American interests, apart from the kind of diplomatic interests that were mentioned earlier from a business person's perspective, I would say one of the key things is that it gives our employees who choose to volunteer a unique experience that in our company anyway, they would not generally get. And people line up for these things. They're highly competitive to win within our organization. And it makes it's one of the ways that we compete effectively with other organizations in our marketplace for the best of talent. It is the fact that we've been doing development in a farmer-owned cooperative for 40 years is something that every one of the people we interview talks about, wants to be a part of, wants to know how they can help. We've developed this concept we call the Foreign Legion of how do we activate these 10,000 employees in unique and new and different ways to bring their talents to bear in the work that USAID and others hire us to do. And so I do think it is very fulfilling for the people who take part. It also is a very demonstrably beneficial thing for our organization where we can tap into our own talent base.
Thanks, John. Other questions, comments from the audience? You are keeping us on schedule. I like that. Oh, wait. Okay, please.
Hi, how are you? I'm Lauren Ruth, and I work with Land O'Lakes, my boss up there. I think to a question people spoke to a bit earlier, a comment I guess I have about what we can do to kind of further promote VISP as a mechanism or volunteerism. I think one of the things that has struck me since getting involved, and I work across all of our programs, but also quite closely with our farmer-to-farmer programming, is that I think all of us in this room have a really important role to play in the continuing education of the missions that we work with around the world, of the power of volunteerism. And I think all of our volunteer awardees that are here today, if you read their profiles in the very nice packet that VEGA put together, you see the caliber of people who are going out to volunteer. And I think a lot of people are struck and surprised by the fact that you're getting people who are the head of extension outreach for veterinary services in Minnesota, people who are the head of major cooperatives in the U.S., people who are at the top of their game in academia and private sector, who are part of global initiatives around rules and regulations around food quality and safety, and the networks that they have to plug back into. So I think there's that one piece. And I think also we can, better than others, talk through and iterate what are the models for these volunteer programs, because they look different and you can set them up differently. And I've found, I think that a lot of times our partners within USA are really open and looking to us to also talk about how these programs can take shape and be designed. So that's my comment. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Lauren. We really appreciate that. And I'll add to that, not to pick on you again, John Douglas, but you and our award winner, one of our award winners, and maybe several of them, I don't know that USAID could afford you without VEGA programs and our member organizations. And so there is that. There is the fact that these partnerships and the infusion of technical assistance that USAID gets is extraordinary. It's not to knock on consultants. They're great. We need them too. But it is different, that person-to-person diplomacy and the level of expertise that comes into these programs. Other questions? Another comment from the audience? While you all are thinking, I'm going to ask our panelists to maybe, there's some congressional staff in the audience who are obviously really interested in these programs and policies, and if you have some recommendations for them on how they can continue to be involved and make sure that they're successful.
Well, I would like to say that the APS as a construct in itself is very interesting in that it calls for you to bring your ideas to the table. And I know that USAID is exploring new mechanisms of funding and more innovative mechanisms than just the cooperative agreement, RFP, RFA issuance, and then receiving responses. And I think that going in that direction will untap some of the latent creativity within our own organizations that can improve our development effectiveness.
That's a great point.
Great, thanks.
I would just encourage everyone to make sure that the procurement process at USAID, whether it's through a program like this or in general, gives opportunities to contractors of all sizes, particularly smaller contractors. There is a lot that can be done by organizations of all sizes, and when you're able to leverage volunteers, as the credit union system and the cooperative systems have done in so many places. I spoke about Ukraine, but we've also done some fantastic work in Poland and Afghanistan and Kenya and other places. You can make a real difference. You know, diplomacy takes a number of different forms, and the work that we all are doing in various areas is really critical to the economic development there.
Thanks, Ryan. And by small contractors, I'm sure you also mean small NGOs.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
I would just say for the congressional staff teams in the room, if there are any, I guess my message would be keep up the fight. These programs broadly that we're talking about are under a lot of debate, as everyone's well aware of, in terms of overall funding levels. It's vital that we continue to push our members of Congress to support. We've had the champions that have been with us today, but not everyone's a champion. So how do we continue to advocate effectively for the financial support that's needed to move these programs forward? I think volunteer-related programs are some of the best of the bunch, because it truly is kind of a win-win-win. Obviously, the U.S. government gets to serve its interests, and to do so at a discount, so to speak. The U.S. organizations, often private sector ones that are involved, get a win, as I spoke of earlier. And lastly, the recipients, because they're on the end of the good end of this terrific, experienced help that they would have almost no ability to lever if it wasn't brought to them through these programs. So, whatever help any of us can provide to help you influence your member of Congress that you work with or the surrounding group, we'd be happy to help.
I would say that these volunteer-based organizations are extraordinarily powerful in their impact. And again, I speak a bit for FSVC, but I think I speak a bit for all of the volunteer-based organizations. We've worked in 65 countries over the course of the 25 years we've been in existence. And I suspect in every one of those countries, we can pick up the phone and talk to the head of the central bank or the minister of finance or the head of the major banks in those countries. I don't know of any dollars that Congress could spend that could possibly have more impact and more benefit for the United States than having these volunteers establish close personal relationships with decision makers, reformers, and others in these countries. I mean, it is extraordinary what can be done here. So to reemphasize keep going is really what I'd like to do.
Thanks so much. I want to thank all of our panelists for a really interesting dialogue, and want to offer to all of you to please stay for our networking reception to continue the conversation. Thanks so much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
So now we've come to the heart of today's program, and that is our awards ceremony for VEGA's Volunteer of the Year awardees. It is really a ceremony about the remarkable individuals who have made an impact over the course of the last year. Each year, VEGA invites our member organizations and the farmer-to-farmer implementing partners to nominate an outstanding volunteer or two. And this year, we have the pleasure of honoring 6. First, I would like to invite John Ellenberger to come back up and kick us off with an award to a special Land O'Lakes volunteer.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Kate, welcome. This is Kate Coffey.
Hi.
You can tell by Kate on her name. No last name needed. No. Kate is a terrific example of who we ought to be honoring through this kind of award. Kate is a native to Ireland. You'll get to a sense for that if you get a chance to talk to her. Also a Canadian. Also a kind of pseudo-American in her volunteer affiliation with us. Also connected heavily to Sri Lanka, where she has been a volunteer as a part of our Biz Plus program that I mentioned earlier. Kate left a cushy, comfortable, high-powered job as a consultant within a global investment firm. Actually, a few of them that she'd been in throughout her 25-year career, and had gotten involved in volunteering in Nepal first, and then found her way to Sri Lanka working with us in Biz Plus, where she spent 9 months volunteering across a range. I mentioned earlier the 50 businesses that we support through the program. Kate was the management consultant, essentially, to 4 of them in quite different industries. Heirloom rice, polybag production, flour milling and a garment industry. So the point there is the skill set that Kate was able to bring through the program is pertinent and beneficial to each one of those. And for that, I would like to thank Kate. She's going to be wintering, as we all would like to, in Canada. Where else would you go? And then will be rejoining us in the summer for a 3-month continued engagement. So Kate, thank you very much on behalf of Land O'Lakes and, can't get this off of here. And on behalf of VEGA, thank you and congratulations.
Thanks very much. There. Okay. Let me just leave them there.
There we go.
Okay. Great.
Thanks.
I'm going to get you
Thank
to
you,
hold
Kate.
that,
Okay.
if you don't mind.
Will do.
I have to put on my glasses, I'm afraid. So we're here today, really, and thanks to the generosity of the American people, as well as the leadership of USAID in making a difference with programs that address the real needs of people less fortunate than us in the room for today. Through VEGA's commitment to providing expert volunteers to programs, poverty is reduced. And people become more economically self-reliant so that the world becomes a more just place. And I've actually seen that in action. Volunteering for me is actually the very essence of who I am. Thank you to VEGA for the opportunities and allowing me to use my decades of business experience, but also to coach entrepreneurs to run successful businesses and building business capacity for the future. And that was the key for me, to not do, but teach how and go forward from there. I have to say a huge thanks to Michael Parr of Land O'Lakes International Development. He's the chief of party in Colombo. And the really fabulous VEGA Biz Plus team across Sri Lanka. They really made my job so much easier for me to do. And lastly, to all the Sri Lankans in the north and east of the country, they really trusted me to open up their minds and their hearts to greater possibilities. And I think that took a lot of courage. Their resilience in recreating their lives after such a traumatic civil war is truly amazing and inspiring. And this really is for them. Thank you very much.
Congratulations, Kate. Thank you very much for all that you do. We're going to take a quick break from our awards ceremony for our volunteers to honor another one of our congressional champions. It's also my pleasure to introduce you to Rodney Ferguson, who is president and CEO of one of VEGA's founding members, Winrock International. Rodney.
Thank you, everyone, for coming out today. As Angela mentioned, I'm Rodney Ferguson. I'm the president and CEO of Winrock International. We are a founding member of VEGA and a proud participant in this program and the Farmer to Farmer program writ large. And I am very honored today to introduce one of those members of Congress being recognized today as a stalwart supporter of volunteer programs. And I should also mention he is the senior senator from the state of Arkansas, demonstrating that volunteer programs are really based in and of America, in the heartland. And our program in Farm to Farmer and our work with VEGA often allows us to work with volunteer farmers, agronomists, market experts from Arkansas, and invariably they come back and they say, this has been a life-changing event for us. And the other thing that gets less attention is they almost always say, I learned more than I imparted, and I'm going to make sure that those lessons are built into the work I do, and I'm going to improve my practices, I'm going to improve my community, and I'm going to bring that intellectual capital back to Arkansas, to wherever they may be from. And it's a great example of how these programs, while doing extraordinary good for people all over the world, they also do extraordinary good for the people of this country and our economy. And so no one has been more of a champion of that than Senator Bozeman. He is a dear friend of Winrock. He has and his staff have supported us and VEGA at every turn. As a member of the Senate Appropriations Subcommittee on State and Foreign Operations, he helps ensure our foreign assistance is both adequately funded and effective. In the last Congress, he co-sponsored legislation to modernize global development, something we all want to do, the Foreign Aid Transparency Act. And in this Congress, he joined Senator Isaacson and Senator Coons on the Economic Growth and Development Act, which seeks to effectively leverage the capabilities and resources of the private sector by making it easier for companies to access and work with U.S. development agencies. And earlier this year, he wrote a letter joined by Senators Isaacson and Leahy in support of Winrock International and our partners in VEGA with USAID to continue to utilize the skills of volunteers. And as a result of this support, USAID has prioritized skilled volunteers in its new initiative, Volunteers for International Security and Prosperity. So, Senator, we are so grateful for everything you do. And on behalf of Winrock and VEGA, we'd like to honor you with this award for your support. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Listen, thank you all so much. This truly is an honor, and it's very much appreciated. But you all are the ones that we really need to appreciate. VEGA does a tremendous job. Those of you that are associated with VEGA, and then the other entities that are represented here, I know you all work very, very hard, and there's just simply no other way of doing things except through personal relationships. I got in and got to hear the last part of the panel, and the gentleman was talking about, you go to a place, you work hard, you help those that are there, you do a good job in that regard, but also there's no substitute for a relationship that's built up as an American, being in or wherever, being in a place like that, them learning more about you, more about your culture. There's just simply no other thing, no other experience. That's how we change the world. I appreciate Kate and the rest of the people that are getting awards today as volunteers, and we appreciate all that you've done. This wouldn't work without you, but I am committed, and the good news is this is you hear a lot about rancor up here and this and that and all the disagreement and the problems coming together, but this is something that has tremendous bipartisan support. And that's a very, very good thing. So we're going to work hard to continue it and enhance it and help you in any way that we can. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thanks again. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator, for joining us on such a busy day. It's my pleasure also to introduce you to another member of Congress who is here to honor his constituent, Congressman Scott Peters from the 52nd District in California. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. It is actually the only 52nd district, if you can. You don't even have to say California. As it was said, I'm Scott Peters. I represent San Diego, Coronado, and Poway in the United States Congress. Before I honor Michael, I just want to underscore what the senator said. We are having a difficult time in Washington, D.C. I think everyone's probably pretty aware of that. But even at the best, most highly functioning moments of the federal government, the state government, the local governments, we cannot replace what volunteers do to help improve the world in our communities. So I want to thank VEGA for all you do, and for all the people who have won these awards. There's many more like them who deserve our thanks too. So we want to thank you for hanging in there and not letting DC get in your way. I have the privilege today of honoring an outstanding San Diego, Michael Messier. Michael is an exceptional volunteer expert Much of this is in the program, but I'll highlight it. Whose work with the Financial Services Volunteer Corps has led to the prevention of money laundering and terrorist finance in Africa and the Middle East. During his time with FSVC, Michael has completed volunteer assignments in Uganda, Jordan, and Dubai. He brings impressive professional experience to his volunteer work, with over 15 years as a U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration's special agent and 5 years at the Bank of America, where he developed and led the Latin American region under global financial crimes and compliance. While on assignment, Michael focused his trainings with government officials and business managers on real-life drug and terrorism case studies. Several officials in Dubai stated that his case study presentation was one of the most practical and advanced investigative sessions they had ever attended. His work led to serious discussions toward creating terrorism task forces in Jordan and Dubai, which are badly needed to track down and prosecute suspected funders of terrorism. And in Uganda, he trained regulators and other professionals on how to comply with anti-money laundering rules that help combat the financing of terrorism. You know, as a volunteer, you're getting a lot more done than a lot of people around here. I would just say you're getting paid. Throughout his service as a volunteer, Michael's forged lifelong relationships and has developed a far-reaching network with whom he continues to share his wealth of knowledge. So in recognition of his dedication to work as a volunteer, his amazing accomplishments while on assignment, and his passion for helping those in need, I am honored to present Michael Messier, a San Diegan who's got amazing talent and accomplishment with the Volunteers for Economic Growth Alliance of Volunteer of the Year Award. Michael, congratulations. Thank you for your great work. We'll do a picture over here. Over here. See? Okay. You gonna make me move over here and take a picture?
Yeah, I am, but after.
Here you go, you take it.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, good afternoon. First, if I want to congratulate my fellow recipients, job well done. I want to thank VEGA for selecting me as one of the recipients of this year's award, as well as the Volunteer Financial Service Corporation for nominating me. FSVC has many volunteers worthy of being here in my place, and I am humbled to be here as their selection. I also want to thank my girlfriend, Claudia, and my stepdaughter, Daniela, who's now studying abroad in The Hague. Their unconditional love and support has made my volunteer experience all the more wonderful. Now, it's during this experience that I've been fortunate to work with such capable and dedicated volunteers at FSVC. Somehow, FSVC has succeeded at maintaining an inventory of talented volunteers who all possess a tremendous amount of subject expertise. But the difference is they have this passionate desire to share the knowledge that they have with others unselfishly. And simply said, my partners at FSVC are individuals of goodwill, striving to make a difference. My fellow volunteers and I were involved in projects addressing, as the Congressman said, projects regarding terrorist financing and money laundering. And during these projects, we worked closely with financial regulators, prosecutors, law enforcement personnel, and even compliance executives from financial institutions located in Africa and in the Middle East. Now, these individuals, the people that we work closely with, they're motivated men and women who wake up every morning dedicated to their mission. And their mission is to improve their country's regulatory and legal systems, while fighting on the front lines of, they're fighting truly evil criminal organizations based not far, if not already on their borders. Now, these motivated men and women are also individuals of goodwill, striving to make a difference. Building bridges between countries and not building a wall, to recruit and create a coalition of individuals of goodwill from the ranks of our diverse global community is today the only way to confront and triumph over the evil that threatens our security of our civilized way of life. Combating these criminal and terrorist organizations is a global challenge, and I am proud to be part of the global fight. However, I am more proud to have worked and served with individuals of goodwill, striving to make a difference. Thank you.
Mike, I have a surprise for you. I have a surprise. Senator Kamala Harris wanted to be here also to honor Mike. She wasn't able to make it, so instead she sent this certificate of recognition.
Yeah. I thank her.
And now I'd like to invite Andrea Patrick to come up with IESC, also a founding member of VEGA. Thank you, Andrea.
Thank you. And I want to just start by also congratulating Kate and Michael today and the other volunteers to follow. I fortunately wrote down my notes today because I was afraid I would go over my 2 minutes. So it's very hard to thank and show gratitude for all the work that you do in the amount of time that we've been given. But certainly we all recognize, and please accept that our great thanks and our gratitude go on every day. I was struck by the words of Senator Isaacson this morning with regard to his comments about Mark Green, saying that he knows what he wants to do, but just as importantly, he knows how to do it. And I think that is, for me, the foundation of what all of you very capable experts, whether it's from the private sector or law enforcement or agricultural cooperatives in this country, bring to international development. So thanks once again. I'm so fortunate to be here to thank and to congratulate my friend and colleague, Lisa Larson, for her work on our project this year in Cambodia, the Capacity Building for Local Organizations program, as well as her work with Land O'Lakes on the Farmer to Farmer program in Lebanon. Vision and leadership, empathy and adaptability, humor and confidence. These are all attributes that Lisa honed during and over-practiced in her 30-year career, helping Fortune 500 companies adapt to changing technology. When called upon by IESC and VEGA to set aside 3 months from her consulting business this year to deploy these attributes as a mentor to community-based organizations in Cambodia, in order to help them recognize their own value, their own talents, to identify their mission, and then to turn those into tangible and practical action plans for sustainability. Lisa did not hesitate to take up our invitation and to hit the road for 3 months this year to really have an impact both in Cambodia and in Lebanon. In a time when community-based organizations in places like Cambodia, Lebanon, even in the United States, and around the world are striving to do more with less with regard to resources in a very precarious and complex environment, interventions like Lisa's and like all of yours have such a significant impact that the value is almost immeasurable. The best of American values of ingenuity channeled to build more resilient communities reminds us and the world that the U.S. is present, that we care, and that we know how to collaborate. By showing our greatest gift, I believe, and that is our knowledge, our gift of education, and our ability to apply it for successful results. So thank you, Lisa. You certainly embody that for us, and we're very happy to... Is there one, Angela? Oh, that's Patrick Leahy's. Sorry. Oh, no, I'll take Andrea right beside you. Oh, sorry. I'm sure that would be interesting to take that one home. That would be a story, wouldn't it? Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Oh, picture. Thank you. Over this way? Yeah, with the sign. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Now I'm emotional. That wasn't supposed to happen. And this is a really good set of comments somebody left here. I want to say sincerely, thank you. The programs that I've participated in have been so thoughtfully organized. The amount of support, the amount of positive encouragement, the amount of thought that has gone into them, the degree to which people care and trust volunteers like ourselves to carry out their missions is humbling and amazing to me. I want to thank all the other volunteers because there are many who have gone before us and there are many who will come after us. And so it is a program and the collective impact in the work that all of us do together. And I'm incredibly humbled to be part of this group. My inclination to volunteer started a long time ago without me realizing it. My father is an anesthesiologist, and he volunteered on overseas trips to correct cleft palates for kids in countries like Peru and Chile and other places like that. And those were without a doubt his favorite 2 weeks of the year by far of everything he did. It's why he practiced. So I didn't realize what an impact that would have on me. And I was a rising IT leader in financial services and healthcare. And I was sort of reaching that point of going, am I really making a difference? What's all this stress for? And I did some IT work with IESC and fell in love with the organization and the people. And they called me. I wasn't a good fit for not just any volunteer assignment. They said, do you want to go to Cambodia for a few months? I know you don't speak the language, and I know you've never been there, and I know you don't know what capacity building is like the people within our industry, but would you like to go? And I'm like, yeah, actually, I really would. And it changed my life profoundly. People here have done a very good job describing how much you get back. But the big reveal to me was that you can use these skills, and you indicated it as well. You can use these skills that you've been building in ways that you never expected. But you can also do business in a way that is honorable and respectful, right? And has dignity and considers the individual and does make a real difference. And it's true partnerships. And I bring that back with me, and it's carried me into even driving around Washington, D.C. It impacts everything I do. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for the opportunity, and I can't wait to go back out and volunteer again. And I'm so honored to be here amongst all of you. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. And what you spoke about, that impact abroad and at home, we call it Volunteer Impact 360. You could use that hashtag if you wanted, or you could use hashtag IVD 2017, because we're not the only ones celebrating today. In 1983, the UN designated December 5th as International Volunteer Day, and so there is a whole world out there celebrating. And so there are also handles in your program. You might have seen those. I would like to congratulate all of our VEGA Volunteer of the Year awardees, and now we are going to give our Farmer to Farmer awards. As I mentioned earlier, every year we invite the Farmer to Farmer community, the core implementing partners of the program, to nominate their outstanding volunteers. And so this year we have 3. To give the first award, I'm going to invite Virginia Bunker with NCBA CLUSA to come.
So thanks everyone for being here today. All of us are either volunteers or work with volunteers, and managing farmer-to-farmer projects at NCBA CLUSA is, I think, the best part of my job. It's wonderful working with people that are so passionate about volunteering and, in our case, supporting farmers and agricultural cooperatives. And the first thing I'd like to say is that in managing our farmer-to-farmer project in Madagascar is that working in Madagascar is tough. Some of you may be thinking about the movie Madagascar, and it's this exotic, beautiful place, and yes, it is all of that, but it is a very hard place to work. This one-year project through VEGA's Special Program Support Project, it took me a long time to get that, that acronym correct. We completed 8 volunteer assignments, 2 of which were done by Matthew, and we had 1 volunteer who had to go home early because he got sick. We had three volunteers who completed their assignments, but they experienced some challenges, I'll say, to not get into it. But because of Cyclone Inawo that hit Madagascar earlier this year, because of where Madagascar is positioned in the Indian Ocean, it frequently, unfortunately, has to deal with cyclones and their effects, and so it's a tough place to work. And in finding Matthew, who is a returned Peace Corps volunteer from who served in Madagascar, was just the perfect fit. And now knowing him for about 1.5 years now, just his passion for the country and for the people and the farmers, vanilla farmers in particular, is who we worked with. It was just so great to work with you on the project, and everything that you've done in the past year for the farmers and helping them for the first time help 2 new cooperatives form through this project. And Matthew worked 50 days on assignments, 2 assignments in the past year during grad school. And grad school is incredibly demanding. And the fact that he gave up pretty much his entire winter break and summer break of his first year of grad school to come back and work with these vanilla farmers just, I think, speaks volumes to where his heart is at. And the farmers are better off because of your support. They successfully sold their vanilla through these new cooperatives, through a partnership with a national exporter, and then McCormick and Company, which I think is the largest spice company in the U.S. And so the fact that they were able to do that successfully is just fantastic. And so thank you, Matthew, for all of your hard work. And it's been wonderful getting to know you, and countless phone calls and emails and scopes of work changing just because of things changing on the ground in Madagascar and your patience and everything. So I'm just full of gratitude for your service, and I know the farmers are, and our whole team in Madagascar. So I'm so pleased to be able to honor you through VEGA with this award. Yeah.
All right. There I was in the middle of Madagascar. I was out in the countryside. I was in a white pickup truck. Back is packed with people. The cabin is stuffed with people. We're cruising along. The sun is shining. We come to a little path, a part of the road that was a bit wet. And the ground is clay, so we slide off the road a little bit. We must have been a little bit too close to the side of the road. Right into the side of the road. So we all jump out of this truck and we're thinking, this doesn't look so great. So after about 5 to 10 minutes, an older gentleman huddles everyone up And I remember he was drawing kind of a game plan in the sand. He had a stick out, and he's drawing a game plan. He's saying, we're going to dig here, and we're going to push back here. The driver's going to go, and, tall white guy, you're going to pry with this stick, and we're going to get this thing out, no problem. So, I mean, this guy has a plan. I'm feeling pretty confident. Let's make it happen. So as we're about to break out and go do this, he pulls a cigarette out of his mouth, and he looks at me, and he says, Ireki krazna faska, femiarika atsika, krazna vatu. And I said, that's it. That's it. This guy was absolutely right. So we go, we dig it out, we're pushing, no problem. And just as I think of that, Ireki ulu krazna faska, he means one by one, people are like sand. Famiarika atsika krazna vat. With each other, we're like a stone. And that just kind of exemplifies not just the cooperative idea, but the collaboration that USAID, VEGA, the farmer-to-farmer programs have implemented. In farmer-to-farmer in particular, the ground-up community engagement, their ability to work directly with farmers, identify problems, and address problems are really what has made it so unique. And I can't even tell you how humbled I am to receive this, because speaking of cooperations and collaboratives, it's a bit hard for me to accept an individual award, individual recognition for a cooperative. And Virginia Bunker, Gabriel Saracen in Madagascar, just the Malagasy people and the staff that I had there, it was just unbelievable. So again, really humbled for this, and I just want to thank everyone who was part of that.
Thanks. Ed, are you still here? Oh, please, come on up. And Wayne.
Good afternoon. It's really my pleasure to be able to introduce Wayne Burleson, Farmer to Farmer Volunteer of the Year. It's remarkable that this list of accolades for Wayne starts off with his retirement. Wayne retired in 2008 after 13 years with the Forest Service, and he was also an entomologist with the U.S. Department of Agricultural Research. He's been also a farming and ranching consultant for 20 years. Wayne has been an ambassador for CNFA. He's conducted 8 volunteer assignments for us, 14 in total. And Wayne just informed me that one of his assignments was 5 months in duration, which I think is quite unusual for the Farmer to Farmer program. Wayne is also a great ambassador for America, and we've heard what this connection brings around the world when we send volunteers and they come back with their stories, their experience. But Wayne is also an ambassador for one of the world's greatest natural resources, and sometimes a forgotten one, soils. Wayne is all about soils. He's a salt-of-the-earth guy. And on all of his trips, he's helped communities address eroded, unhealthy soils through his born-again soil approach. He has a trademark black gold compost. And this is an example of the kind of low-tech, low-cost technology that has such a big impact in the places where we work in our farmer-to-farmer countries. Wayne has used composting as an effective means to increase soil productivity, improve crop quality, combat pests, because a healthy soil leads to healthy plants, leads to greater resistance against pests. So it all starts with the soil. Wayne aptly understands this. Just in the last year, Wayne also taught organic fruit and vegetable farming techniques in our farmer-to-farmer country, Malawi. He's promoted chopping and dropping instead of slashing and burning, which is a great technique and quite an improvement on past methods. Wayne also, he's hip. He's got a Facebook page, Gardening for Life, if you want to learn more. And he's written 3 books, one of them called Rut Buster, how to set lifelong goals to get out of your daily ruts. And so I think Wayne's a guy who walks the talk. It's my pleasure to present this Farmer to Farmer Award to Wayne. I'd also like to ask his wife, Connie, who has accompanied him on Farmer to Farmer visits, to come up and accept the award together, if she would not mind. Wayne, thank you. Okay. Congratulations, Wayne.
Thank you.
All right.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Ed. Great introduction. I don't know if I can live up to that, but we'll try. Farmer to Farmer has sent us around the world, and us, of course, as Connie, to 5 different countries, teaching people how to grow food that really have almost no money. And I'm dead serious about that. In the past decade, I appreciate CNFA for sending us on these, because we wouldn't have come up with some of the new innovative ideas that I've been pushing myself to help people overseas with soil problems. Incidentally, I wanted to jump around a little bit. I got up this morning and I put my cell phone on. And the first words on my cell phone, and I wasn't even out of the bed, said, "Today, December 5th, is World Soil Day." I said, oh my goodness, what a coincidence. It's the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. Oh, a big deal. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about soil. They give us some statistics. There's 815 million people that have food insecurity problems. 2 billion people are nutritionally insecure. I thought, oh my goodness. You know, that's a little under the third of the population of the world. I thought, you can mitigate this. We can mitigate this through changing the ways we handle our soil and manage our soil. As an African person told us, we were on a little tour and went to a museum, and this guy named Edward stands up and he says, "Do you realize that African people lived to 120 years old before modern agriculture?" And I, jerked back like, wow, that's amazing. And then he said this profound statement: "Since the invention of iron, man has been making the land naked for 2,000 years." And I thought, I was just dumbfounded at that statement. I said, oh my goodness, this has been going on a long time. I want to, through Farmer to Farmer, through CNFA, help reverse that trend. And I'm serious about that. I want to come up with some new ideas about putting the crops back on the soil instead of burning them. I want to answer the one lady's question that was talking about why we do this and why is it so important. And I'm here to tell you right now that people burn in Africa all the time. They burn their crops, they burn their land, they burn their fields, they burn this, and the smoke fills the air. Every time I'm in an airplane and after all these trips, the smoke is always there. And it's changing our weather. Carbon is going the wrong way. It's going up. We need to make it go down into the soil. We've got to feed these soils. If you don't feed the soils, they won't feed you. So it's a gigantic problem. So we come up with a new term that I like to use the rest of my career and volunteer whenever it's accessible or we can do it, and it's called Naked Lands No More. I want to really get serious about this and teach people, and we've been successful. And the success, I believe, to stop the fires, because if you think of what fires cause, burning all that thing, that soil compactions, the soil heats up, you lose short rains. The big rains that come along, the water runs off. It takes the topsoil with them. It's why we've seen it run through towns and run through their stores. There goes the topsoil down to the lower lands. And it's lost forever from where it originally was setting. I see many trips of the women that do all the work to plant the fields before the rainy season, and they have that big hole over their shoulder walking down, and they spend hours and hours and hours out there chopping the soil. It's okay to chop the soil, but they're not putting the organic matter back in the soil, and it hurts them so bad. One farmer in Malawi said it takes 80% of his crop to pay his chemical bill. And I said, oh my goodness, he's working 20% for a profit, and that's not good. It's not healthy. I'm going to make this short because we're running out of time. My Connie's sitting right there. My beautiful little wife fell off a mountain June 1. I watched her. She broke her neck in 9 places. Her vertebrae, the sternum, the shoulder, and everything. And I watched her come down the mountainside. I said, oh my goodness, she shouldn't even be alive. So I ran up the hill and took care of that. But I want to tell you something. If you have healthy soils and you grow healthy food, you can heal people with that healthy food. And that's a fact. And so here she is with all these broken bones. We have a plant growing in our garden called comfrey. Comfrey scientific name means knit bone. It knits the bones together. So for June, July, and August, we seriously ate out of that garden way more than we always do before. There she sits today, just as she's healed better than she was before, and I'll attribute it to the garden. So I want to thank you for this award. The work is not over with. This Naked Land thing has got a lot to do with it. And one last plug about I missed that on the starting fires overseas or anywhere in the world. They lead to the erosion, the water is gone forever, and they lead to poverty, and poverty can lead to wars. That's the holistic approach of taking a good look at this whole program. Thank you, Farmer to Farmer, for this award.
Congratulations, Wayne. I'd like to invite up Linda Akanvu from NCBA CLUSA.
So I wrote up something and then I forgot it at the office. So I'm just going to read out of my phone, and if you see that I'm not looking at you, it's because I don't see well and I have to be very focused here. So Erin and I met 2 years ago, and although she's a very busy woman, she has been one of the most dedicated volunteers I've had since I've been managing Farmer to Farmer at NCBA CLUSA. She's an organic farmer. She is the co-owner of Hilltop Community Farm. She is an instructor at the University of Wisconsin-Madison College, right? She's a writer. She is a farmer representative at the USDA Sustainable Ag Research and Education Program. And she is a farmer-to-farmer volunteer. And to date, she has been on 6 assignments in Senegal. She has been an instrumental person in the implementation of the project, because sometimes we even ask ourselves when we have ideas, what would Erin think about this idea? We need to go and reach out to her. So she has been more than just a volunteer. She has given more than a time of 2-week assignment. She comes up with the coolest ideas, the most interesting one on how to improve the lives of the people we're working with on the ground. So yes, Erin, we want you to know that we hear you and we read all your emails. And we come up sometimes with some events, like the networking event we have been trying to implement next year. That's one of your ideas that we had. So thank you for that. And we want you to know that you have been a very special person in our lives at NCBA CLUSA. We read your blog. We share your stories with our members. We love your thank you cards. You've been at the office, you've seen it. And we enjoy talking to you on the phone, laughing at your stories. So we appreciate the fact that you are constantly advocating for us and for the project anywhere you are in all your networking groups. So I met Erin 2 years ago, and because of volunteers like her, I dreamed of becoming a gardener one day. I'm really bad with plants. I killed my cactus, which was the only plant I actually owned. So, but, you know, she is this type of person that keeps your dream alive. And I would like to thank her for that. And I want her to know that we have been, you know, always grateful for everything you've done. We hope that this award convey all our, you know, wish and appreciation. And we hope that you have been also getting something out of this amazing experience we have been getting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So sweet. Wow, hope you all need to shake it out a little. I think I might need to. We've been sitting here for a while. Wow, thank you very much. I will be brief. I'm so glad we mentioned the whole gamut of why we do the work we do, from starting with the soil and our humble collaborations with not just this humosphere, but each human that we interact with. And I've had the honor of meeting such a great network of people. Just want to take you back maybe to 2012 very briefly. I just hung up my tools in my small farm in Laval, Wisconsin, and I traded in the current harvest for some cassava and the landscape of bur oaks for baobab trees. And I landed in 2 feet of water in Dakar at the airport. I was like, whoa. So I was like breathing in the smell of ocean and like fish and diesel and just like, where am I? But little did I know how saturated I would be, not just in my feet, but in my heart. And Senegal just had a way of getting into your bones, so to speak, that soul love when we talk about loving the soil and the people who our hands are in the dirt with each other. So little did I know that, you know, how much the farmscapes would change my mind along the way. So since then, for about 5 years, I've had a chance to support and experience Senegal's warmth in January in Wisconsin. It's really great to take a break. But most notably, the people there and the hundreds of women, mostly women farmers, I've had a chance to work with. And I just can't reiterate enough. I know you, just to get this into our bodies too, as well as our hearts and minds. But Farmer to Farmer is about the soil, ground up, peer-to-peer approach to learning and skill sharing. And you know, as we do this, as we cultivate these relationships and learn how to figure out where our strengths are, not surprisingly, we know that, wow, what you're dealing with in Senegal, like I have the same kind of issue in Wisconsin, and we all speak this shared language of soil and of human connectedness, which is so crucial to I think, just being human, right? And this mycelial networks notwithstanding. So I would say that working with my soil sister peers in Senegal and doing this in partnership, and not only means we can grow long-lasting relationships. And, it's really important. Women do so much important work, not to discredit men and just all our roles we play, but women are doing amazing work that often isn't recognized on the farm, everywhere in the world, really. And I'm so appreciative that Farmer to Farmer recognizes and values this expertise in all of the implementing partners who make these things happen. So you make it really easy for a woman to get away from her farm and just to feel so well supported, so I can show up and be present for people who have also taken the time out of their busy days just to spend some time with this lady from Wisconsin. Where is that? So anyhow, I think that just speaks miles to the program, and I just think, oh boy, I'll just keep going in gratitude. My heart is overflowing. So just just to echo that the farmer to farmer really does put something in your heart. And I'm just so grateful for the logistical magic you all have done in your own humble ways and collaborating with other people in the hemisphere itself, so that we can just figure out how to be in this world alongside doing what we know what to do. So thank you so much. It's a real honor.
Let's have a big round of applause for all of our award winners. Thank you all for your patience. I know I promised that we would have some time to network, and we will. I know it's been a long program, but, passion, it's hard to schedule it. So we do have a representative from Congressman French Hill's office here, and I'd like to invite Rodney to come back up and say a few words about Congressman Hill. I also hear that Congressman Connolly is on his way. So if he gets here before we break, great. If not, then we'll just invite him to speak over coffee. Rodney?
Thank you very much. Well, thank you again. I don't have to introduce myself again. You should remember me from 30 minutes ago. But thank you, Angela and Mike, and all of you again. We're here now to honor another one of our congressional champions, Congressman French Hill from the 2nd Congressional District in Arkansas. He happens to be the representative that represents the Winrock headquarters in Little Rock. We are literally within his district. And there's a nice story here in that Congressman Hill is relatively new to Congress. He has been in, he is, I guess, his first term, and he is not on the Foreign Relations Committee. He is on the Financial Services Committee in the House and several of the subcommittees. His intersection with international development is he is on the subcommittee for illicit finance, which is one of the groups in Congress which is charged with helping make it difficult for terrorists and those that would do harm to the United States from having access to financial instruments and financial conduits that would allow them to move money and resources around the world. So as a result, Congressman Hill has developed a real interest in how do we help countries and institutions around the world better track their financial resources, their monies, their people. And as a result, he is taking an active interest in our work. He has been extremely helpful to us. He was one of the original writers of the letter that went to help make the case for the continuation of VEGA, which of course led to the new mechanism. And again, it's important just to note he did that without an obvious congressional mandate from his committee assignments. He did it because he genuinely believes in what we do at Winrock and what VEGA does and what all of you do. He is a proponent of international development. He is a very wise and broadly read and learned man that has determined that our stake in the world is based on our reputation in the world. And as a result, he has taken an active interest, as has his staff, in assuring that America's place in the world remains at the top for those countries that want to emulate us in both our transparency, our rule of law, our humanitarianism, and the effectiveness of our markets, very importantly. So we are very grateful for Congressman Hill, And we're sorry he can't be with us today, but he is with us both in spirit and by proxy. We're joined today by one of Congressman Hill's staff who is going to accept the award on his behalf. So why don't we come and do that, Dylan? Great to see you. Great to see you. We really appreciate. Please convey to Congressman Hill how much we appreciate his support.
Absolutely,
and we will. So, if you want to say a word, I know you come bearing tidings from Congress.
Thank you so much. Unfortunately, Congressman Hill couldn't make it. We're actually in the middle of a transatlantic legislators dialogue with some members of the European Union Parliament, which is exciting because we're talking about very similar things that this discussion's been going on here today, and how we interact with our allies and friends over in the European Union, both economic national security, but also the role we all play in aid to the developing world. Rodney spoke very highly of my boss and said a lot of the exact kind of thoughts I would have. I think the most important thing when Congressman Hill reviewed this type of thing was, of course, the work that Windrock does, but also, we need to be really pumping in excitement and focusing on the organizations and the groups that are successful with foreign aid that the U.S. gives to other countries. And VEGA and USAID, this is one of the perfect examples of that. So I'll leave it brief, and thank you so much to VEGA and Rodney. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Also, I should just apologize. That's Dylan Frost, by the way, who is on Congressman Hill's staff. So I failed to introduce him by name, just referred to him as the anonymous staffer. He's far from anonymous. So thank you very much.
Well, as I mentioned, we're expecting Congressman Connolly any minute. We were also hoping to have Senator Leahy here today, but they're working on, a budget or something like that. So I think what we'll do is we'll go ahead and break so that you can have some coffee and speak with one another. And when and if the congressman arrives from votes, we'll allow him a chance to speak. And want to thank all of you for sticking it out with us, for being here today, for all that you do. Especially want to thank VEGA members and farmer-to-farmer partners, implementing partners for your nominations. Of course, our volunteers for their commitment and generosity, for our congressional champions, and those congressional staff who are still here. I'm on such a busy week. Thank you so much. Also, VEGA staff and volunteers. We couldn't have done today without you. Thank you all very much. Hi, everyone. It's Angela again, and I'm calling Michael Deal to the front of the room. Mike? Oh, he found the congressman. Congressman Connolly has joined us, and Mike Deal is coming forward with him to introduce him.
Oh, don't say that. Excuse me. Could I have your attention for a second, please?
Oh, all right.
Sorry.
Thank you. That's all right. Thank you.
Hello. Sorry, we just adjourned after a couple of hours, and everybody's enjoying getting up and being able to walk around. But I wanted to have the opportunity. It's my privilege and honor to introduce Congressman Jerry Connolly. He's my congressman in Northern Virginia, so it's an especially good privilege for me. And Congressman Connolly really is a champion for policies that improve the lives of his constituents, but also for the lives and livelihoods of people all over the globe. Congressman, you've not had a chance to today to hear some of the great stories of volunteers, but we really appreciate your support. And you are in a particularly good position, based on your 10 years as a staffer with the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, your role now on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. You are a voice for global development and diplomacy, and your support for the State Department and AID and getting resources and the tools that those agencies need to do their job is really critical. And you have been a spokesperson, and you've been instrumental in some landmark legislation. You were a co-sponsor for the Foreign Affairs Transparency Act, and also your sponsorship of the Electrify Africa Act. So we really appreciate all that you do and your attention to global affairs and global diplomacy. You've also been a champion in your role on the caucus for the Peace Corps for international service, and you've been a champion for us here at VEGA. And it was very important, your support signing on to a letter, joining the letter from Representative French Hill. We just had an opportunity to recognize the congressman who wasn't able to join us, but we really appreciate the support in that letter to express the importance of the American generosity and giving opportunities for Americans to serve back and to contribute in many ways, not only saving taxpayer dollars, but also in terms of representing the best of American diplomacy in the work around the world. And some of the stories that we've heard today from our volunteers have really, really been impressive. So thank you for joining us today. We really are grateful for your support. And on behalf of VEGA and our 28 volunteer sending NGOs, we really appreciate all that you do and your continued support for American volunteers.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm sorry I'm late, but we had votes, and that's a schedule I don't control. And it almost seems to happen every time I make a commitment in the afternoon when we're in session, they call it votes. And a lot of my colleagues getting ready to go to the White House holiday party today. Not me, but others. And so they wanted to get out early, and so that's why they called votes early. I just want to thank Mike and VEGA for really wonderful work you do. As Mike said, I've been in the international development field off and on since I first moved to Washington in 1972. And I have seen firsthand here and abroad the impact NGOs have on people's lives. And frankly, U.S. foreign assistance couldn't do the job without partners in the NGO community, and you're a sterling example. So I was pleased to support the reauthorization with AID, and I want to see, frankly, a broader use of NGOs in deploying resources, in reaching people who need to be reached. At the end of the day, the NGO community that represents the United States overseas through the development program represent the best of us. They represent our highest values, sometimes entirely without any purpose other than I want to help. And when the recipient experiences that, it can start to transform the view of that interaction and who we are, we Americans, that we really do attempt to live up to our values. And we really do care about people like them. And so we now more than ever, we need that witness. We need that kind of experience overseas, and that's why the work you do is so important, maybe more than ever. Because there's doubt planted in some people's minds about, is America still reliable? Are we really that shining hill on the city Ronald Reagan used to talk about? And, that shining city on the hill, I guess he meant by that, he was taking an old Puritan line, by the way, about that in my home state of Massachusetts. But as a Roman Catholic, Irish Roman Catholic, I can tell you the shining hill on the city, on the hill, did not mean Catholics. And a lot of people in this room, it didn't mean you either. So it's a work in progress, right, that shining city? But I think what he meant was we put our best face forward. We try to live up to our ideals. And that is what you represent in real terms. And I can't thank you I just can't thank you enough for doing that. And that's why I wanted to hobble on over here. I blew up my knee. That's why I'm hobbling, by the way. It's not a permanent condition, we hope. But I wanted to make the effort, even though I knew that your deliberations were mostly over, to just come in person to thank you. Thank you for the award, but more importantly, thank you for what you do. Have a wonderful holiday season and keep on trucking. Thank you.